This is CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast with business solutions MVPs Joel Lindstrom, George Doubinski, and Sean, the CRM Hobbit Tabor. This week, George couldn't be with us, so in his place we have Steve Mordue and Daryl LaBar joining us. This episode is sponsored by CRM UG. The user group for Dynamics 365 and the CRM community is powered by users, for users, and specializes in the delivery of member-driven education, networking, and events to help you maximize your current Microsoft Dynamics investment. Check out their website at crmug.com. We thank CRMUG for their sponsorship of CRM Audio. Welcome to the first CRM Audio episode of 2018. Unfortunately, George couldn't be with us, so it takes two people to replace one George Doubinski, so we have Daryl LaBar and Steve Mordue on this episode. Hi, fellas.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing?
I'm representing the bald head.
Yes.
So we needed a bald developer. So we got Daryl for the developer side and Steve for the balding. It works out nice.
I'll try and be ornery also.
With our powers combined.
We got Mr. Hobbit here too, so I thought it'd be good since Florida is in this massive cold snap where it's 60 degrees or something.
It was 30
you could
this
commiserate
morning.
About having to get your light jackets out or something.
I wore two jackets today. It was cold.
How do you put up with that freezing frigid temperature?
Yeah, we haven't been out of the house in 4 days.
It's not only the first episode of 2018, it's the normal CRM Audio. It's my birthday episode, so it's extremely special.
Outstanding.
And you don't look a day over
Happy
50.
birthday.
And to celebrate my birthday, I'm in beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. Hopefully, we'll meet up with Mr. LaBar later.
They have a great comic book store downtown. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's pretty great.
Is that how you keep track of different cities, by the quality of their comic book stores?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay, so since this is the beginning of 2018, things you do at the beginning of the year is you make predictions. So, knowing where we left off, Steve, why don't you say where did we leave off at the end of 2017 with Dynamics?
I think we left off with a whole bunch of really neat components that aren't quite finished.
And a bunch of unanswered questions.
A bunch of unanswered questions, lots of neat features, capabilities, all of which are 95% built. And my hope is for this year that that last 5% is completed quickly and all those pieces are actually humming like a machine.
And we had we left the V9 released, but multiple things still not released. Outlook app, offline mobile. I think there's a couple other things in there too.
Yeah, I think in general everything has taken a little longer than they might have thought. I still have very high hopes for James Phillips taking the reins, that he's less of a shiny object guy and is going to more focus on getting these things that they've got completely done and buttoned up tight as a drum before they go continuing down the path of launching new fireworks. At least that's my hope.
Okay, so let's go around and do some predictions. Since it's my birthday, I'm going to start. My prediction is that marketing in its initial release will not be a huge success. I think that's going to have some interest and some people will adopt it, but I think it's going to be initially something that doesn't take off. But if Microsoft keeps investing in it, keeps improving it, I think it's got a future. But I do think, though, one of the underlying components it uses, customer insights, is going to be a big thing. I think it's going to fundamentally change the way the intelligence with Dynamics, specifically around the 360-degree view, and making. It's just the next evolution of machine learning into Dynamics and in a meaningful way. It's taking things that were possible before, but making them much more accessible. The same story Microsoft has had for many different platforms, going all the way back to things like Excel.
Yeah, I'd give a little contrary view on marketing. Maybe it's because of the filter that I see things through, which is that SMB customer. I think it's going to do pretty well in SMB. Um, I think that a lot of SMers don't have marketing solutions today, may be looking at marketing solutions, may not be familiar with Click Dimensions or the others. And Microsoft's going to be promoting their own product pretty strong. And I think that it could be that's the product that a lot of SMB customers hear about first. And I think it's got a good chance with that SMB customer right out of the gate.
Do we know what it's going to be priced at yet? I think that was the one factor that's going to be part of the determinant there.
We don't. I've heard rumor that it's going to be potentially higher than what Click Dimensions is, and certainly lower than Adobe. I think that Microsoft feels that their marketing application, since it includes event management, which they're looking at as a differentiator, they feel kind of gives it a little more value maybe than Click Dimensions as a solution to cover more bases, but still nowhere near what Adobe's doing. So I think that I had heard that's kind of a spot they're looking at, but we'll see how it actually lands in the spring.
Do you find a lot of demand for event management with small, medium-sized businesses?
I do not.
So that's the thing I don't understand yet. If it does turn out to be more expensive, and it is justifiable if you look at it, you get event management along with marketing. But if for small to medium-sized business, if they can get core email marketing functionality with Click Dimensions at a lower price point, isn't Click Dimensions still going to have an advantage?
I think if I were an SMB customer and I was knowledgeable, I probably, for that kind of need would lean towards Click Dimensions. But I think Microsoft's going to have the megaphone to the SMB customer's ear ahead of everybody else. And I think there's some advantage to that. I think the whole SMB marketing approach for Microsoft is going to change this year. They're kind of moving it up out of the subsidiaries and up at a high level of a global approach. So I think there's going to be a single voice coming out of Microsoft to SMB, which there hasn't been historically in the past. So I think SMB might finally be getting on the radar in a big way this year. And if Microsoft's got a megaphone to SMB, they're going to be talking, Microsoft marketing. And it may be purchased before the customer even knows Click Dimensions exists. That'll be a challenge for Click.
Now, would you see, Steve, that with these new applications coming out, having more and more hooks and more dependency on Azure, would you see that those price points changing to go lower license-wise because of the back?
It's a good question, and certainly Dynamics Marketing will be introducing lots of customers to Azure almost without their knowledge. Well, I mean with their knowledge, but in order to deploy that, they're going to be setting up. Azure is going to be set up as part of that. So, in a way, marketing could be a nose under the tent. Oh yeah,
right, and potentially a lot of transactions, right? A lot of transactions potentially, right? Yeah.
I know that even in some of our trial instances on the preview, where we were supposed to be getting some credits that wasn't working properly, I think all of us were getting hit with some costs. Microsoft ultimately reversed them as part of the preview, but it did give you kind of an idea of what's going to be happening behind the scenes on that. And that's obviously got to factor into what they're going to charge for the per user license for the software.
I think part of the power of Dynamics Marketing 365 for marketing, not to confuse people with Microsoft Dynamics Marketing, which died, but for Dynamics 365 for marketing, part of the real power there that Microsoft could leverage is in some of the stuff that's in customer insights and the really powerful segmentation engine tied in there too. Has a lot of value, and that's one of the things for lead scoring. Compared to what Click Dimensions has right now, that to me gives customer insights an advantage for things like lead scoring over the way the approach that Click Dimensions does it right now. Of course, Click Dimensions, I think Matthew Whitteman made some reference to it, like they may decide to also leverage customer insights or give the option to do that. And that's one area where I would be, if I was Click Dimensions, I'd be a little bit worried because and it's also will be an advantage to some people to be able to leverage standard platform pieces like Voice of the Customer, like Portal, like Customer Insights, rather than having a third-party tool.
I think one of the interesting things about Dynamics Marketing is that this is really the first application that Microsoft has built the same way we have all had to build our applications, as a solution. It's not part of the core package. It's a solution just like any solution, any of us partners might have built in the past. And it's the first time for them
Wouldn't
doing
project services be in that category, though, too?
Yeah, but they forked a lot of that off of the other product, the field service. So they had a starting point, I think, with project service. Yeah, whereas marketing was all kind of net new, greenfield building for them. I can imagine some of the people on the Microsoft development team getting frustrated trying to build a solution, running into the typical challenges we've always run into. Of course, they have the advantage of being able to pop the hood and move some wires around that we never could. So we may all benefit from that as well. Now they're building all their first-party stuff the same way we do.
That's been a continual story that we're hearing more and more from Microsoft. Is they're trying to abide to their own rules that they impose on us, and realizing a lot of the pain that we've been feeling, and have been continually been moving more and more towards making it so everyone is in the same. They're in the same sandbox and they have the same tools we do, and they're not doing all these magical things underneath the hood, and that's making, I think, our lives will be easier going forward.
Now it's their problem.
They've got that pretty well finished off.
All right, so what about you, Mr. LaBar? Let's give us some developer predictions.
I have no knowledge on this, so I have no idea if this is going to be right or not. So if it happens to be right, then I'm a genius. But if it doesn't, then I obviously have no idea what I'm talking about. But this year, I think the common data model, the common data service, is really going to morph into something more than what it is. I see it being, I see the start of the current interactions with CRM kind of changing, so that you're now no longer thinking of CRM as what it is. You're actually thinking of CRM sitting on top of that CDS, rather than thinking of it as we have since the 2011 era of what it is underneath the covers. So I think that's going to be something that's going to change in the next year, or have at least the startings and the inkings of whispers of things changing with that, where it's not going to be standard CRM system. It's now in Dynamics, and it's going to be different. So that's one thing I think is going to happen. Another huge thing I think we're going to see a lot is a lot more Azure interactions and Azure functionality that's going to be exposed now that it is no longer in their own little separate sandbox, but is in Azure itself. I think we're going to see a lot more control for developers to be able to control more with their plugins, or even to make it easier to farm things off of the CRM sandbox into their own Azure instance, even easier than what it is before, and with better controls over transactions and things like that. So that's what I'm hoping for and seeing coming down the pipe.
Okay, Mr. Hobbit, your predictions?
Well, I'm going to predict that we're going to have multiple releases this year of functionality, and I think we saw a hint of this with the end of the year double update within a 10-day period on Universal Resource Scheduling. But with the new solution model and infrastructure, I think we're going to see a lot more releases of product kind of vertical solutions, as opposed to the big bang spring fall kind of solution. I think we'll still get the spring fall solution update, but I think you're going to see more minor releases.
Are you thinking
product
new
level
feature
than we have
releases,
before.
or just releasing fixes and tweaks and refinement?
Yeah. No, I'm thinking it's a combination of. Remember the old days with update rollups, where you'd have some minor features? I'm thinking something along the lines of that, but a little bit more on steroids.
Well, I mean, we've already seen some of that, because 2 weeks ago we got the new email editor for the unified interface.
Yep, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's going to happen more and more across more and more of the products.
I've got to think with the release that's coming, we know there's going to be some kind of .1 or something that comes out before the end of January when they start upgrading people, and they generally make Outlook and offline generally available. There's probably going to be some refinements baked into that as well. So I think you're.
And my other prediction is I think that by fall, I think the docs.microsoft.com site will be much more detailed than it, which is important because there's spots where there's kind of almost a dead link, but it brings you to a page, but it really doesn't say much.
I'm going to predict that we're going to see LinkedIn go beyond the Sales Navigator. We're going to see further integrations. I think there's some things with the privacy policies of LinkedIn that prevents going whole hog, but I think there's a lot more they could do. We're already seeing it tying into all kinds of different Office products and other things like that, and Power BI, and so that's going to get more. I would also suspect, and again, I don't know anything about this, but looking at some of the things that happened in recent months, some of the Ignite sessions, some of the things James Phillips said, and some of the other Microsoft platforms like the Microsoft 365 and some of the Azure stuff that has kind of reawoken on premises more in a true hybrid manner. I've got to think at some point, be it the next release of Dynamics, some of these Azure functions and things that you can only do with an online version are going to be going more true hybrid options.
But would they be hybrid options? Would that be hybrid options that you have to be connected, you have to be online to be able to do it? Or will there be hybrid functions where you can do it offline as well?
Hybrid functions where you can run it on premises, but it can seamlessly leverage the Microsoft Cloud services, is what I'm saying.
It'd be interesting to see where the LinkedIn thing does go. I mean, they obviously, Benioff made a big stink at the acquisition that Microsoft was going to hoard all this data and your privacy was no longer safe. And obviously that wasn't the case. Microsoft bought that product, kept it separate, are honoring all of the, privacy commitments LinkedIn had to its customers. So now it's a matter of figuring how can we best leverage this data within those guidelines. So you'll never be able to just log into CRM and go search the entire LinkedIn database. That's not going to be something that would ever be allowed. But how far can you go within that fence of connectivity and productivity within these applications? And I do agree with Joel. There's another level beyond. I think they took stuff they already had. I just kind of tweaked it a little bit for right now. But I think there's another level we're going to see with that.
Do we also see that LinkedIn is going to turn more into more of what Twitter and Facebook is for some people now, where they're getting they're trying to be that public image to everyone else? Do we see that happening as well? Because I think that's begun to happen, where I've seen more and more people that are not on Twitter business-wise, and they are totally only on LinkedIn. And I'm wondering if that trend will continue as well, and we'll start seeing more social stuff, not just business-related social, but non-social stuff on there as well.
That's kind of I think that's a double-edged sword, right? It gets you a lot more content, but is it the content that you want to have in that repository? Is that the stuff I'm looking for? Now, I guess from one point of view, it gives you non-business, touch-pointy kind of things you could look at and talk to people about. Reason for an in-mail to go out. But I think in order to really harness that, there needs to be a deeper level of data mining in your relationships and that Dynamics data to understand those links, right? Not just, I'm part of this group or they're part of my team link, I have a relationship, but being able to explore those interests, because right now there's less hobbies and interests kind of thing in LinkedIn, and it's more the recommendations and things of that sort. So it'd be interesting to see. I'd like to see the content, but I don't know if that would be good content for business.
Yeah, I think Microsoft would be better served by making sure that LinkedIn is differentiated from Twitter and Facebook, and not that those three all just kind of get morphed into, three services that are very similar. I think they really need to stake out, what LinkedIn is in comparison to Facebook and in comparison to Twitter, and not just have them all morph into one thing. So I'd be surprised. I mean, you see it now even where somebody will put something on LinkedIn, and then a bunch of people complain that should have been on Facebook, and then some big old back and forth about what was posted and why, and you just don't have to follow me.
Right.
But it does seem kind of pointless
Right.
if Facebook has established itself as such a personal social network, and LinkedIn has established itself as mostly a business social network. It does seem kind of pointless to be cross-posting your stuff around.
Well, it's interesting. LinkedIn is the only one of those three that people intentionally pay for the premium content, for one thing. And also, LinkedIn has really improved over the last year as a blogging platform. People are doing a lot longer form writing on it. You don't see that as much on Facebook. So by doing that, feels more like a premium service. It feels more like a service people want to use now than it did a year and a half ago. So that's a good thing. And I think look at where they're going with it with Office, with the people profiles. I think that's a perfect example of what they could do to make it more part of CRM, while still probably having more of a premium Sales Navigator tier. Where Office is going is if I have somebody in my inbox, in my contacts on Exchange, I can see them. I can see their public LinkedIn profile details from the people profile card, and that would be something that I could see very well going in Dynamics, where we're not violating any privacy policies. You have this as your public profile. You're in CRM. It matches you up, and without having to have a subscription, give at least that level.
I was just going to say, I've actually strongly considered moving my blog to LinkedIn, just knowing where that could potentially go from LinkedIn, as opposed to sitting out on a WordPress site that I'm hosting and whatever traffic I drive. If they had a button to push to import your WordPress blog into LinkedIn and convert it all into LinkedIn posts and just start posting on LinkedIn, I'd probably do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I've had that same thought. I think they look really good. The LinkedIn articles are really attractive. They also have really good stats where you can see a lot of detail. I get better stats from that than any other posts I do any other place. I still think, though, that the historical posts are kind of hidden. So, like, if I want to see Steve's previous posts, I kind of got to hunt for them. Where if I know I can go to stevemordue.com, I can see all your posts. And so that's the thing I think that is, compared to the other social networks, it feels to me, and again, this is just my perception, but the stuff that is the current stream is easy to find. But the things from a week ago, if I remember something 3 weeks ago, it's not necessarily easy to find it.
Yeah, it wasn't built as a blogging platform, but it certainly could become one with a couple more tweaks, like you said, some search capability. It wouldn't be far away. And it certainly would be for a lot of business people like myself. I think a better place to put the content than, like I say, sitting out on a site I've got, because it's all integrated, and potentially, who knows, maybe your blog posts about an article are showing up in someone's office feed or something like that when they're looking around for stuff. I think there's some future, more of a future for stuff that goes in there than there might be on something you put on a personal blog. So, and I like the traction. You're right. I mean, I get a lot of traction just when we link to a post out there.
I'm hoping with what Daryl was talking about with the oh damn, now I can't remember the acronym.
CDS.
Thank you. Good goodness. With CDS, hopefully there'll be easier, better, more robust integration to not only AX but other potential ERPs as well. I'm going through a project right now where we're integrating with an ERP, and it's an experience.
Right. I mean, the CDS right now has no real value over a staging table. I mean, it does. It has some templated integration steps for common integration points around the product catalog and orders. But when you from extending it or from using an ETL tool to move data into it and out of it, it doesn't. It just isn't there yet. It's great if you're running a Power App because it's kind of the database backend for it. But if they made it more extensible, gave it an SDK so I could connect KingswaySoft to it and open it up, I think the vision they pointed was this seamless integration between AX and CRM, or operations and customer engagement. And that's just not there right now. And I think the XRM nature of CRM, where you can't predict everybody's going to always have things in the same place, is a blocker in some ways to have just a plug and play seamless, things magically move between. You need to have the ability to change the mapping and easily customize and extend it.
They kind of have to get there, though. I mean, they pulled all these products under this single Dynamics 365 brand, where the marketplace would assume that these things all coexist and work well together. When in reality today, it's no easier to integrate, AX or NAV to Dynamics as it is any other product out there, almost the same steps. But potentially CDS, it's almost like it would have been nice if they'd had CDS when they pulled all this stuff under an umbrella, because that's kind of the foundation at the bottom of the thing that could potentially connect all these pieces. When that's all done, and then you really do have a Dynamics 365 family instead of just separate products all sharing a name.
I see George loving Flow more and more every day. Now I see we're gonna start getting into projects here where Flow is gonna become an issue with some of the things that people have been concerned about as well on that topic. Like it's the macro. It's a new version of macros, or you have a company process that's built upon this thing, and no one knows what it does or how to change it and how to force it to be under the control of the right people that should be able to control it. And so I think that we're going to start seeing some of those kind of things pop up as consultants as a whole, but just as an industry as a whole, having to deal with people doing things that all of a sudden become a part of the fundamental process that the business is required to run. And it's going to be painful at times to get that under the correct.
Okay. So Sean, we had some news about an acquisition from Microsoft. What was the acquisition?
Microsoft agreed to acquire a company called Avere Systems. They're a file storage vendor for Windows and Linux, and it's their file system and their caching technologies for Windows and Linux clients with Azure that it looks like was the big play here. I'm curious, given that it's a file system, is this something more that they're looking to make this acquisition to help, the Cosmos DB initiative? Is this a play to enhance the Azure blob storage angle? What are your thoughts on the storage play here, especially with Azure?
I was going to say that I've been hoping for Microsoft to give me yet one more place to store a document, because I don't have but about 20 now.
I don't see it as a thing to actually a new place to store the document. I think it's how it's dealing with large documents and making sure those are efficiently cached or not efficiently cached local, I believe, from what I'm reading on the company.
Right. Yeah, it's more the technology behind the storage and the connection to the cloud rather than an actual solution, storage solution, right?
Yeah, I would just be happy if Microsoft was able to do the same sort of online collaborative work in a Word document as you have with Google Docs. Google Docs online collaboration is so seamless, and Word is so painful in comparison. So if even some of that technology would be helpful in smoothing out that interactions, that would be great as well.
Yeah, the Google Docs collaboration's been very robust. I mean, geez, since I was in college. So it's a while. But I'm wondering what this acquisition means, bigger picture, for potential for the product line. Is it really just looking at the Windows platform? Is it looking at the Dynamics side as well? What are we thinking there?
Well, I think when reading about it, the thing about Avere is they are two things. One is they're backed by Google. They were backed by Google as a startup, so it's kind of a competitive strike against them. The second thing is Avere does some very large, complex, cloud-based stuff. They host the Library of Congress, for example, and other really complex document storage systems. And so, this isn't probably going to affect us on our personal OneDrive, but it's going to make the Microsoft Cloud a more attractive solution, a more stable solution for very large, complex workloads.
It's the storage side, and it looks like Avere, they're also known for their high performance computing, so that really could play well with Azure as more and more components are dependent on Azure. It gives more computing power behind it, gives a larger infrastructure to bolster the Azure cloud, competing with AWS and Google Cloud. I can see a lot of potential here, but and really a lot of what, according to Avere's website, they work a lot with customers in life science, financial services, oil and gas, and so it does look like a really good fit. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Back on the Dynamics topics, Daryl, have you done any playing with virtual entities yet? We have, and I've seen some preliminary stuff, but I'm waiting for enough dust to gather on the V9 release to see what are we really seeing with the initial release of virtual entities. Do we feel positive, or we see a lot of people starting to implement them?
I have not gotten my hands wet with virtual entities yet, but from everything, I've been doing the same thing of keeping my ears out to hear where are people using it, how is it being effective, and things like that. I think there's still a lot of, we wish it had just a little bit more than what it has. We wish it had some update capability. We wish it had some more standard supported integrations besides what already exists. And there's been multiple people that have struggled a lot to create their own, to implement those virtual entities as well. And so I think that those initial people have got that figured out and have started to blog about it. I think we'll start to see an uptick in that as well. But I have not gotten my hands wet in there. I'm not usually the bleeding edge person when it comes to some of those new features.
Yeah, I think the idea is awesome. I mean, if they can pull it off, and I got to think that it's fairly complicated to make something like that work, but if they can pull that off, that's a game changer, I think, for all of us. I mean, that's just going to be potentially huge. But I think that because it's such a potential game changer, it's probably a lot more complex than we've all given credit, and I think it'll be a little while for them to get that sorted out.
Right. So what's new on the small to medium-sized business front, Steve, with the death of Business Edition as we knew it? What are you hearing from your customers, and what are they looking for? What's the next big shoe to drop for small businesses?
The next big shoe to drop for SMB will be spring, when we see where they decide they're going to land on pricing. Right now we've got SMB promotional SKUs that are at SMB price points. If they maintain something similar to that, even though they've pivoted what they're calling these things, then I think we'll be fine. SMB's always been very interested in the product. Some of their bigger challenges have less to do with the licensing than with implementation costs. But then licensing definitely plays a big role. So if they get the licensing right, I think SMB will be very excited this year. If they don't, that could stunt what's going on. But given the approach they're talking about taking globally with SMB, is just the opposite of my thought, and what a lot of partners that were in the space was feeling that Microsoft was kind of abandoning SMB, and it seems like the opposite is the case. They're just going after it from a different angle, and frankly, I think a much better angle. So I think SMB is going to be a big play this year.
So what is the status with the upgrades? What do we know? When can we get upgraded to the V9?
Well, the customer driven updates are beginning in next month. Now that it's January, it's so weird to say that. In February, so you should be keeping an eye out in your admin center for the update on when your organization can be scheduled for an update. That should be happening within the next few weeks, I would imagine.
They're not going to release that until they've got the Outlook app at GA, right?
Right, and offline too.
Yeah, we're assuming that that'll be done, and I guess that's why this thing got pushed from December out to now February, is because it wasn't done, but it may well get pushed again.
Yeah, I mean, they published a blog post and came out and said the upgrades are going to start. Now, that could still push, but they at least came out and said publicly what was going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. I can't remember if those December dates were public or not at the time.
Right.
Maybe they weren't.
Right. Here's one thing I want to know is with the unified interface, since we have got functionality released, like the email editor released after the initial release of V9, I'm wondering if other things like advanced find or some of the configuration items, configuration capabilities in the unified interface might come out before the next release too.
Well, I think it's going to depend on whether or not it's dependent on the V9 infrastructure. So if it, because if they release it before the customer-driven update, there's going to be a lot of people that can't take advantage of it. But I mean, that's been done before too. Right.
I was in a meeting yesterday with somebody who is coming off of CRM. They're actually on Dynamics 365, but they had only used the Outlook client. And like in several other companies I've talked to, they had abandoned it because it slowed Outlook down so badly. I showed them the Outlook app. They loved it. And they were saying, this is exactly what we want. And Steve, I'm thinking back to your blog post earlier this year talking about the gaps in it. I think what I've tried with the V9, at least, and again, I can't talk about the preview, but I think they've closed most of the gaps there. The only thing, and again, the V9 one isn't out there, but with the 8.2 is still fairly complete. The thing that's missing is still going to hurt a little bit for people that use the Outlook client in certain ways is you can't track tasks. So people who create tasks or assign tasks in Outlook or Exchange, there's no way to track them without creating them directly in CRM. I'm wondering, though, if that's because if you surveyed users, do you think tasks are like the least used activities in Outlook? Like they're a second tier compared to appointments?
Well, they function different in Outlook than they do in Dynamics. Because in Outlook, there's a lot more functionality and capability in terms of scheduling, reporting, status updates, that kind of thing that you don't get in Dynamics. So perhaps it was in order to really have that sync effective, it just wasn't feasible. And if you look at the normal flow of business, tasks, like you're saying, are just not as widely used as appointments or phone calls.
And here's something I'm going to say that's maybe a little controversial, but I think the tracking of tasks is kind of pointless because when you complete a task, it deletes the task from CRM. And so, therefore, you never build up, if you're completing tasks in your Outlook task list, you never build up a task history.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like, why does that need to be in CRM? Other than if you are managing a project or something where you need to look at group tasks and see overall what tasks are still open, then it makes sense, but create them in CRM.
Well, and it's deleting the task from CRM because it deletes it in Outlook, right? When you complete it in Outlook.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So-
I think it may just be prioritization. I mean, they deprecated the old client, which, like you said, many people were using, and was I mean, you could almost do anything you could do in CRM from Outlook with the old client. Switching that to the app model, there was a lot fewer features of what you could do from Outlook, and maybe too few for a lot of those users to move off the old thick client. And they had to. When I wrote that post, that was early days. We had a couple of bleeding edge customers out there trying that out, and they had come from the thick client. Customers that had never seen the thick client loved the new Outlook app, but the ones that had come from the thick client were the ones that struggled. And but I do agree. They buttoned up a lot of the holes in that thing and got it really tight. And I think they just had to pick their battles, and maybe task comes later.
I mean, the fact that if you go and turn the preview feature on right now in V9, you can try it out. But the thing about it is the fact that I can now search and browse CRM from the Outlook app. I can see the relationship assistant. I can see my recently viewed records. There's almost nothing that I could do in the old app, in the old Outlook client that I can't do in the new one. There's a few things like the integration with the address book that some people like, but for the most part, it's good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the old client, depending on your security role, you could actually, build a custom entity from the Outlook side of things. I mean, it gave you way more than you ever needed from Outlook. And I think there were a lot of users out there that only knew of CRM from within Outlook, that maybe even never went to the web client. I wouldn't be surprised at some large organizations if there were users who didn't even know there was anything other than the Outlook connector, and that was CRM.
Oh yeah, we had something like that, and it was only when the users started to mutiny and stop using CRM that they gave them browser access. Okay, so if you have been off for the holidays or focused on other things, just want to mention we did have 6 episodes in the last 2 weeks. Keeping up our pace of 3 a week. We had some really good ones. We had a CRM audio where we played some clips. I think Steve and Daryl were both in that episode. We had Mark Smith had a great episode, and we had. I thought the field service episode was good as well. You guys have really taken the at your service to the. You've raised the level of service. You got a new blog or something now, Sean?
We do. It's a companion blog to the podcast, and Scott, Sarah, and myself are blogging at least once a week. We're trying to bring content, extend the content of the podcast to the blog to provide a little bit more detail. And we had some really exciting things happening in 2018 that we have planned that we're talking about on this week's. At your service, but you can get to our at your service blog at atyourservicepod.com.
Yeah, check it out. It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Daryl, what kind of interesting side projects do you have cooking for us?
Well, I got a lot of fixes really to do as the current task. As of yesterday, I believe it is, version 9 turned off one of the security layers. And so some of the tools that I've written before I hadn't got around to updating yet, and they have done broke. So I've got some cleanup I need to do on some of those things. And I'm in the process of looking at doing some front-end work for the first time in a while publicly in a way to be able to make life a little bit easier for developers for accessing the front end. So that's something that may or may not come up in the near future.
Are you still as excited about TypeScript as you were when you came on in 2017?
I am just as excited about it, and that's where that is coming from, is that as well. And I did talk to the Delegate guys who I mentioned before, as they've got more experience than I do in that, and had a couple conversations with them this last month actually, and we've come up with they came up with a good solution to one of the problems that I was facing with not using them, and so I'm looking forward to maybe utilizing that in the future as well. So yes, I'm still excited about TypeScript, still hoping that it continues to find more and more people in the CRM and the Dynamics world using it. It's a very, very beneficial language and tool to use.
How about you, Steve? You got anything new with your rapid release or your rapid deployment tool?
Yeah, we're starting now to work on the vertical versions of that, which has always been a plan of ours to have a rapid start for contractors, for law firms, for some of those different typical SMB verticals. We're really right now just trying to get prepared for spring. Spring for Microsoft for Dynamics is going to be a fireworks display. I think between all the products finally coming together and launching, we got Dynamics Marketing, we got the new versions of Dynamics. We got a lot of stuff happening around the SMB side, all kind of positioned for spring. So it's going to be here, faster than we could get ready for it. But a lot of my day nowadays is really spent trying to get ourselves in the best position for spring.
Are you leveraging App Designer for your verticalized solutions now?
We rebuilt all of Rapid Start in App Designer. It was the perfect tool for what we were trying to do. Much better than the way we had originally approached it, which was the only way we could approach it. And App Designer just gave us a perfect tool for doing that. If anybody's not looked at App Designer, awesome tool. Citizen developer level. Don't need a partner, a developer to create some very granular views of Dynamics for a particular user in their role. Keeps them out of trouble, gives them what they need, makes it much less confusing for them. Definitely worth exploring. And like I say, we built our entire thing within that App Designer framework.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How about you got any blog posts coming out soon that you wanted to mention?
I go in flurries, right? I just sent one out here a couple of days ago talking about fiddler's disease, which is a SMB problem where you've got those customers that just can't stop fiddling with their deployment and have every excuse in the book to not launch.
I think that's a problem in every size company.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not just SMB. I mean, there is something to the fact that you need to let that implementation kind of just settle.
You don't get any ROI until you launch,
right?
And you don't really know anything until you launch. You can sit back and make some assumptions. A common understanding or a common opinion of a lot of our customers in the SMB space is that all their users are a bunch of morons and couldn't possibly figure out how to use anything, and so they keep fiddling and tweaking and moving this field over there and then moving it back again and over there again, and at some point you just got to pull the trigger and launch and then react. And I think the sooner you can launch with minimum viable product, which is our mantra is launch with basic functionality, get adoption first, then build. The sooner you can get it into users' hands, the sooner you realize what real issues are. Because I've just seen too many customers spend a lot of time trying to solve something they think is going to be a big problem that ends up not being an issue at all. And something else they hadn't even thought about ends up being something that needs to be addressed and reacted to. So my advice to SMB customers, launch. Yep. Launch it.
All right. Well, since George isn't here, we have to have at least one rant in every episode. Daryl, you want to do any grumpy developer rants?
Yes. I hate the fact that I still can't trigger JavaScript from business rules. If Microsoft would get their act together and be able to do that, then finally I can do some work in JavaScript and some work in business rules. But right now, that is not a possibility. So there's a rant for
you. Is that because the nature of the asynchronous nature of business rules of how that works, or what?
It's just because they don't give you the option to trigger the on-change events. Triggering on-change events could be very dangerous to some people, where they could easily create an infinite loop, where I'm changing a field and that's triggering the event that then fires a change for the field that is triggered, and so now it's they're continually looping, and so they don't do that by default. And even in JavaScript, it doesn't do that by default. But you can say, yes, I do want to fire the on-change events, and that allows you to fire anything that's wired up, including business rules. So I can trigger a business rule from JavaScript, but I can't trigger JavaScript from a business rule.
Ah, okay.
Now, wouldn't it be great Daryl, if you could fire that JavaScript from a step action in a business process flow, because you can trigger a workflow. That's a feature that's in preview still, but I mean that everything I've seen on that is the user has to take a proactive step to make that happen, like pressing a button or filling in a form, filling in a field, something, right? That would be an ideal place.
To fire JavaScript when you go to the next stage in a business process flow?
Well, it could be well, the step action could be like you're in a business process flow and you need to get an approval from somebody, so you have to press a button to say get approval, and then that fires a workflow to send a task to somebody.
Now, you might have misspoken, Daryl. Did you say triggering JavaScript from a business process flow or from a business rule?
No, he said business rule. I'm just saying an opportunity, because with that action step, you can trigger a workflow, but I was just asking if that would be a good opportunity to insert the potential to trigger a JavaScript where it takes some of the issue away from the infinite loop, because it's a proactive action from the user.
Yeah, and part of it is kind of a metaphor thing to me, because it's like JavaScript, you've got the specific event, the onload, the onChange, and business rule just sometimes gets into this weird middle twilight zone where it's both and neither. You know what I mean? So if you want to say, I want to do this when you open the form, sometimes that doesn't fire dependably. But sometimes it's, I only want this to happen when I update it. I don't want it to happen when I open the form or when I create it. And that's where giving you more granular control over that would make it better, I think.
Yeah, and it's there. There's just no easy way of being able to determine how to do that. I mean, there's no way to define that in the UI. I mean, the JavaScript's all there, and it just writes JavaScript, so it's capable. It's just there's no UI for it.
Well, since we're missing George, I'll do a quick George impression and just disagree with everything Daryl just said for no particular reason.
And I will hang my head in shame, and Sean will laugh at me.
But before you disagree with him, you have to interrupt him 3 times.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast, with Business Solutions MVPs George Doubinski, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean Tabor. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC. Follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or any place else that fine podcasts are available. You can email us at voice@crm.audio with questions or topic suggestions.